Great morning, everyone, and welcome to our virtual class in Bound 6401, Thesis Writing 1. Today is week 9 of our trimester. And for this session, I will be talking about analysis of data gathered. Okay, so let us continue the elements of the research methodology for your chapter 3. So what we have done so far, we have already discussed about research design. And we say that research design could be descriptive, comparative, causal, experimental. Research local, it just shows where is the study being conducted, when. Of course, participants of the respondents or the respondents of the study. We discussed it, population, sample size, and sampling technique. Instrument of the study, meaning the questionnaire. If we are doing a survey, it will be a question guide if it will be for an interview or a focus group. So that is for the instrument of the study. Data gathering procedure. And now, analysis of data. So we already, assuming you already gathered all the data that you need, what would you do to them? So for analysis of data, we will discuss that. At the end of the session, the student should be able to, number 1, understand methods for analyzing data. How to analyze quantitative data and understand how to analyze qualitative data. Now, your data analysis methods will depend on the type of data you collect and how you prepare it for analysis. Data can often be analyzed both quantitatively and qualitatively. For example, survey responses could be analyzed qualitatively by studying the meanings of responses, or quantitatively by studying the frequencies of respondents. So again, let us review. When we say quantitatively, we are talking of numbers, amounts, percentages. In terms of qualitatively, our data are in words. So for qualitative analysis method, used to understand words, ideas, and experiences. You can use it to interpret data that was collected from open-ended survey and interview questions, literature reviews, case studies, and other sources that use text rather than numbers. So it is also used when you apply non-probability sampling methods. So qualitative analysis tends to be quite flexible and relies on the researcher's judgment. So you have to reflect carefully on your choices and assumptions. Quantitative analysis, on the other hand, uses numbers and statistics to understand frequencies, averages, and correlations in descriptive studies, or cause and effect relationships in experiments. You can use quantitative analysis to interpret data that was collected either during an experiment using probability sampling methods. Because the data is collected and analyzed in a statistically valid way, the results of quantitative analysis can be easily standardized and shared among researchers. So aside from the fact that the results of quantitative analysis can be generalized into the population, using the accepted sample size. So as I mentioned, in undergraduate thesis, we recommend to use quantitative analysis. We cannot accept pure qualitative. So you can use quantitative analysis or a mixed quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis. Okay. So again, we have statistical analysis and thematic analysis. There are two methods of analyzing data: quantitative or qualitative. So this statistical analysis is used for quantitative, thematic analysis is used for qualitative. So when to use statistical analysis? To analyze data collected in a statistically valid manner from experiments, surveys, and observations. Thematic analysis, on the other hand, used to analyze data collected from interviews, focus groups, or textual sources to understand general themes in the data and how they are communicated. So let us start with analyzing quantitative data. For example, you want to study the popularity of different leisure activities by gender. So you distribute a survey and ask participants how many times they did each of the following in the past year. Number one is go to the library, watch a movie at the theater, or visit a national park. So your data set is the collection of responses to the survey. Now you can use descriptive statistics to find out the overall frequency of each activity, the averages for each activity, and the spread of respondents for each activity. So those corresponds to distribution, central tendencies, and measures of variability. What is frequency distribution? So we have simple and group frequency. For the variable of gender, you list all possible answers on the left-hand column. And then you count the number of or percentage of responses for each answer and display it on the right-hand column. Ito raw yung nasa left. Ano ba ang mga possible answer? The respondents are either man or woman. And perhaps they don't want to answer their gender. So these are the possible on the left side, possible responses. And these are the frequency or the number of responses. So on the right side, you can use number or percentage. So for man, we have 182. Women, 235. No answer, 27. So how can you interpret this table? You can just say, you can see that more women than men took part in the study. For every table, you have to describe. So you can see that more women that took part in the study than men. What about group frequency distribution table? In a group frequency distribution, you can group numerical responses values and add up the number of responses for each group. You can also convert each of these numbers to percentages. For example, library visits in the past year, 0 to 4, 6%. 5 to 8 times, 20%. 9 to 12 times, 42%. 13 to 16, 24. More than 17 visits, 8%. Now, how do we present or interpret this or describe it? You just say from this table, you can see that most people visited the library between 5 and 16 times in the past year. Saan galing yun? Ayan, 5 to 16. Kasi 20, 42, and 24. A total of, kumbaga, 86%. So, majority really, although majority at 42% visited the library 9 to 12 times a year, but It is also significant that 20% visited 5 to 8, 13 to 16. So all in all, we can say that the most people, say 86%, visited the library between 5 and 16 times in the past years. So pwedeng simple frequency, pwedeng group frequency, and percentage distribution table. Tawag dito, percentage distribution. Yung kanina, frequency distribution. Let's go on the measures of central tendencies. Review your statistics, and there are 3 measures of central tendencies: mean, median, and mode. The mean, or M, is the most commonly used method for finding the average. Alam natin to, average. To find the mean, simply add up all response values and divide the sum by the total number of responses. The total number of responses or observation is called the N. Okay. So data set. Oh, for example, this represents the data: 15, 3, 12, 0, 24, and 3. So we sum, we get the total of all the values: 15 plus 3 plus 12 plus 0 plus 24 plus 3. We arrive at 57. Now, how many number is the total responses? 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We have 6 responses. All we have to do now is to divide the sum of values by N. So to find M, 57 over 6. And we get the mean as 9.5. Therefore, from the data set, the central measure of tendency, the average or mean is 9.5. What about the median? The median is the value that exactly in the middle of a data set. Kung ano yung nasa gitna. To find the median, order each response value from the smallest to the biggest. Then the median is the number in the middle. If there are 2 numbers in the middle, find their mean. Let's say, ito ang ordered data set natin. 0, 3, 3, 12, 15, and 24. So there are 6. So we divide it in half. So ang nasa gitna niya ay 3 and 12. So these are the middle numbers. So you find the mean of the 2 middle numbers. 3 plus 12 divided by 2. Therefore, the median is 7.5. Now, if we have, this is for even numbered ordered set. If we have odd numbered, then, for example, wala itong 0. Tanggalin natin yung 0. Ang order set natin ay 3, 3, 12, 15, 24. So for those 5 na yan, ang nasa gitna ay yung 12. Okay? And last measure is the mode. The mode is simply the most popular or most frequent response value. A data set can have no mode, 1 mode, or more than 1 mode. To find the mode, order your data set from the lowest to highest and find the response that occurs most frequently. Ano ba yung pinakamaraming beses nag-appear? So 0, 3, 3, 12, 15, 24. Ang pinakamarami ay 3. So the mode is 3. Yan. So we have to also consider the relationship between the mean, median, and mode. Remember, during the mean, we found out 9.5. Using the median, parang 7.5 dahil yung mean of the middle. Pero sa mode, 3. So, gamitin natin yung pinakamalapit. So, mean and median, so medyo malapit sila sa isa't isa. Yung mode na 3, this is not representative of the entire. Bivariate analysis. So, for example, we will have what is known as contingency table. In a contingency table, each cell represents the intersection of 2 variables. Usually an independent variable, example gender, appears along the vertical axis and a dependent one appears along the horizontal axis or the activities. You read across the table to see how the independent and dependent variables relate to each other. So this is the independent, this is the dependent variable. So, ang groupings niya ngayon ay 0 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 16, tsaka 17 plus. At dito, men and women. So, in the intersection, so let us see, for men, ito ang individual frequency from 0 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 16, 17 plus. So, here, dalawang variables. Gender and yung number of visits. So, kung mapapansin natin, 68% majority of men visited the library 5 to 8 times, while for women, 13 to 16 times ang majority. Nag-visit ng 13 to 16. So, interpreting a contingency table is easier when the raw data is converted to percentages. Percentages make each row comparable to the other by making it seem as if each group had only 100 observation or participants. When creating a percentage-based contingency table, you add the n for each independent variable on the n. Ayan. So, for example, again, we have the independent variables, we have the dependent variables. For men, 18, 37, 20%, and total number, 182, while for women, 235. This is the percentage distribution of the number of their visits to the library. Now, let us try to interpret. From this table, it is more clear that similar proportions of men and women go to the library over 17 times a year. So similar proportions, 11 and 12. Additionally, men most commonly went to the library between 5 and 8 times kasi 37% ang pinakamataas na percentage. While for women, this number was between 13 and 16 kasi ayan, 35%. So halos pareho silang 37, 35%, and they are the majority. Okay. Now, for comparative researches, we will use comparison tests. So comparison tests assess whether there are differences in means, medians, or ranking of scores of two or more groups. To decide which test suits your aim, consider whether your data meets the conditions necessary for parametric tests, the number of samples, and the levels of measurement of your variables. Means can only be found for interval or ratio data, while medians and rankings are more appropriate measures for ordinal data. So, anong mga research question, ang ina-address ng comparison test? For example, is there a significant difference in the assessment of compliance with the government's health and safety protocols as perceived by hotel employees and by their guests? So we have two sets of respondents, employees and their guests. So pareho natin silang pinag-assess kumusta ba ang compliance ng ating hotel with the government's health and safety protocols. Nag-answer ang employees, nag-answer ang guests. Pareho natin silang tinali. Now, let us test yung kanilang mean kung halos pareho ba or magkaiba. So, ang tanong, is there a significant difference in the assessment? So, we have two sets of respondents. Is there a significant difference in the effectiveness of leadership styles of the managers as perceived by the managers themselves and by their subordinates? Again, we have two sets of respondents. So, meron bang difference yung sagot ng mga managers at sagot ng subordinates? Siyempre, iba ang mean, iba ang sagot ng mga managers. Pwede sabihin nila, oo naman, effective ang aming leadership style. So, pwedeng sagot ng subordinates, ganito ang aming tingin. So, ang resulta pwedeng magkaiba or magkapareho. So, yung significant difference ang ating ini-establish. Itong question ito, pwede rin i-rephrase as, what is the comparison, di ba? What is the difference or how do you compare? What is the comparison of the assessment of compliance as perceived by hotel employees and by their guests? So what is the comparison of the effectiveness of leadership styles of managers as perceived by the managers themselves and by their subordinates? Is there significant difference in the assessment of quality of services provided by a company as perceived by the employees and by their customers? Again, we have two sets. We're comparing the assessments of the quality of services. Okay, comparison test. We have different statistical tools. The most popular are Thesis and ANOVA. So when we are comparing means, we are using this too. So this is for 2 samples, meaning 2 sets of respondents, 3 samples, 3 sets of respondents. For example, natin, how do we compare the academic achievement of students of Section A, Section B, and Section C? So 3 set na yon. Ibig sabihin, t-test, hindi ko na pwedeng gamitin, but instead, I will use analysis of variance. Now, kung ang ating ginamit ay median, so ang gagamitin natin ay Mood's median. Kung distribution, Wilcoxon syndrome. Kunyari, rankings, sum of rankings, Wilcoxon rank sum, or what is known as Mann-Whitney U. And for 3 sample, Kruskal-Wallis H. So mean rankings, ira-rank natin siya. 3 samples. So ito lang ang madalas ginagamit, comparison test. So kung hindi descriptive comparative research, descriptive and correlational research. So ang tanong dito, what is the relationship between 2 variables? So what is the relationship between working conditions and work performance? Tanungin natin, kumusta ang working environment in terms of different indicators or different variables or different factors. And then tanungin natin, ano ba ang kanilang work performance? And then we establish the relationship between the variables. So, ang inyong research should be not only descriptive but descriptive comparative or descriptive correlation. So, again, another question, what is the correlation between sales benefits and sales performance? O, titingnan naman natin, ano ba ang performance ng ating mga sales people? Nakaka-apekto kaya yung benefits nila, yung taas ng commission, kung ano bang mga sales benefits yon. So we correlate. We establish the relationship. So what is the correlation between sales benefits and sales performance? So we can rephrase our question to what is the relationship between the 2 variables, or what is the correlation between the 2 variables? Or correlation, what is the influence of income to spending behavior? So, i-relate natin, meron bang relationship ang income at saka yung spending behavior? So, we are correlating, establishing the correlation, the relationship between 2 variables. Is there a correlation between demographics and customer satisfaction? Remember, ang SOP number 1 natin ay about the demographics. So we will introduce sino-sino ba yung respondents in terms of their sex, gender, or in this case, income. Yeah, question number 3, income. And then question number 2 will be, what is the perceptions of the customers in terms of kung ano yung mga variables or indicators ng customer satisfaction. And question number 3, dyan na papasok, is there a correlation between demographics and customer satisfaction? Ano naman ang correlation test? Correlation tests determine the extent to which two variables are associated or related. Although Pearson's R is the most statistically powerful test, ayan, Spearman's R is appropriate for interval and ratio variables when the data doesn't follow a normal distribution. The chi-square test of independence is the only test that can be used with nominal variables. Yan. So Pearson's R, Spearman, chi-square. We also have regression tests. Regression tests demonstrate whether change in predictor variables cause changes in an outcome variable. So ito ay for experimental researches. So meron tayong ang ginagawa niyo predictor, yung if you will remember the paradigm predictor criterion research paradigm. So meron tayong predictors, variables na we are assuming that predicts the outcome variable. Predictor and ano yun? Predictor and yeah. So this is used for kumbaga cause and effect. Kapag nabago ang cause, ano ang effect? Most of the commonly used regression tests are parametric. If your data is not normally distributed, you can perform data transformations. Data transformations help you make your data normally distributed using mathematical operations like taking the square root of each value. Now, ang mga regression tests available are simple linear regression and multiple linear regression. So, ayun, predictor, outcome. Multiple, two or more interval ratio. And we also have logistic regression, nominal regression, and ordinal regression. So, ito ang most popular, itong ginagamit natin sa ating undergraduate thesis. Okay? So, ang ating research could be descriptive, comparative, descriptive, correlational, and descriptive, causal. So ngayon pa lang, isipin nyo na ano ba ang data na aking kukunin, na aking gagather, at paano ko ba siya ma-analyze. So you have this analytical statistics analysis tools. Now, sometimes sa ating questionnaire, bukod sa close-ended, sa bandang huli, meron tayong mga open-ended questions. Yung mga in general, are you satisfied? Yung mga gano'n natin. Or what can you recommend to improve our services? Merong mga qualitative data. As I mentioned, sa undergraduate thesis, huwag tayong gumamit ng pure qualitative. Ang pure qualitative, ginagamit ito sa term paper, case studies, but not for our thesis. We recommend use pure quantitative or a mixed quantitative qualitative method. How to analyze qualitative data? So we use thematic analysis. Thematic analysis is a good approach to research where you're trying to find out something about people's views, opinions, knowledge, experiences, or values from a set of qualitative data. Remember, kapag nag-interview tayo, iba-ibang opinion, iba-iba ang kanilang experiences. So, paano natin magpagsama-sama yon at i-present at i-interpret? So, we use thematic analysis. For example, interview transcripts, social media profiles, or survey responses. Some types of research questions you might use thematic analysis to answer. Number one, how do patients perceive doctors in a hospital setting? So open-ended ang question. So iba-iba ang sagot ng mga pasyente. So anong gagawin mo? So doon sa mga sagot nila, group them in terms of themes. Yan. Ano ba yung mga similar responses. And then, i-group nyo sila and then i-present. What are the young women's experiences on dating sites? Open-ended question. What are non-experts' ideas and opinions about climate change? How is gender constructed in high school history teaching? So when to use thematic analysis to answer any of the previous questions, you would collect data from a group of relevant participants and then analyze it. Thematic analysis allows you a lot of flexibility in interpreting the data and allows you to approach large data sets more easily by sorting them into broad themes. Bakit sinabing flexibility in interpreting? Kasi remember, meron kang isang question. Kung nanonood kayo ng mga interviews, in-depth interviews nila Karen Davila, nila Tina Monson Palma, ayan. Di ba yung questions nila nanganganak-anak? May follow-up questions. Kaya tinawag na in-depth. Meron lang silang guide questions, pero kapag may naisip sila, may follow-up questions. Diba? Yung interview nila Karen Davila, nila Tina Monson Palma, one-on-one. Pero pwede rin focus group. I don't know kung napapanin yung kay Dr. Boy Abunda, yung points of view ba yun? No, marami siyang mga guests, kumbaga panels. Yun ang focus group niya. So they have some issue and then tinatanong niya kung ano ba yung mga points of view ng kanyang mga guests. So that is a focus group discussion. At yun ay ginagamit sa qualitative analysis. Okay? However, it also involves the risk of missing nuances in the data. Thematic analysis is often quite subjective and relies on the searcher's judgment. So, you have to reflect carefully on your own choices and interpretations. Okay, so for the sources of my lecture, you can visit the following websites: www.scriptr.com/statistics/descriptive statistic, inferential statistics, and how to do thematic analysis. Thank you very much for listening. That ends my presentation. Thank you for joining, and I will entertain now your questions, comments, or suggestions.